Happy Monday and happy Valentine's Day week. It's a week now. But
Thanks for joining us, Scott.
what's up, Scott?
Oh, delighted to be here, guys, on our now becoming annual Valentine's Day week Monday morning data chat. Is that long enough? Can you fit that in there in the title?
We will, yeah. But it has become a regular thing. It's your third appearance on the Valentine's Day. And I think, in fact, that they just going by math, the first time you're on was Valentine's Day, and so anyway, you become the regular. We actually had to switch a guest around because there's like can't not have Scott on a different date than this one.
I appreciate that. Appreciate the flexibility there.
Yeah, exactly. So what's new with you? What have you been up to?
Just cranking on the puppets. The data puppets is a big focus of mine lately, in case you haven't noticed. I have my data engineering puppet character. Hopefully, right? I did that Who Wore It Best data engineering camo post.
Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah,
Joe, and then the raccoon character I had created had a camo vest on, and somehow I just went, all right, I've got 2 data points. That's a trend. That's enough to draw.
There's a trend. Yeah. I have this for the audience. I have a you can't tell by the wonderful pink shirt I have on, but I also have a camouflage bomber jacket that I often wear, and somehow it fit with Scott's. This was not planned at all, the puppet outfit, but
it works.
It works.
Yeah, so I did that. Those of you who haven't seen it, just Google data puppets and you'll find my stuff. I'm the only thing that comes up. It's unique in the data space to have anything starting with the word data and have only one alternative show up when you Google it. So I'm proud of my SEO marketers, 100% organic, dream come true. Google data puppets and you'll find all my stuff. So I'm focusing a lot on that. I'm working on this epic. Joe, you'll be in there at some point. I've got your scene. We can talk about that if you want. Doing a lot of content with brands as usual. Got some nice events lined up as the year starts to fill in. And I'm down here in our usual, and speaking of annual, snowbird Airbnb nomad trip to Florida from the Northeast. Me and the data whisperer load up the car and come down here and go. We're in our 3rd out of 8 places we're staying between.
Oh boy! Okay.
Between Martin Luther King Day and Easter, that whole period, we've got 8 different places we're staying in for a variety of reasons.
8. It's a lot of logistics.
It's a lot of. We're good at packing and unpacking, but it's fun. Yeah. Well, a couple of them are hotels. I'm going to the Gartner show. I'll be at Enterprise Data World. And where else? In Cocoa Beach right now, on the Space Coast, the East Coast, Space Coast.
Sounds terrible.
I'm having a ball. Yes, I'm having a ball here. So in case you don't know,
you should come back to the Northeast where we have good weather. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know why you want the sunshine. You can get skin cancer from that.
Actually, George, we're taking listener questions already here, but George asks, by the way, what's your favorite puppet there, Scott?
My favorite has to be the star of my show here, this chief dog officer, the CDO. The chief dog officer is kind of like the star of this epic. But I've been having fun creating all these other little characters. The ITB, obviously, there's a great interview online. I got to post it with George's wonderful wife and partner, Deanna, where she interviewed the ITB. We talked about AI. We talked about artificial intelligence. We talked about Gen AI. We talked about generative artificial intelligence, all the top topics. And we had fun. It was fun. In terms of a creative challenge, it was a blast to actually have a live interview with a puppet talking to a real person and just kind of the logistics of that. And I felt very Jim Henson-like.
I was about to say, this is straight out of Sesame Street or one of his movies there. You may be onto something. Maybe this is a new trend for content, just puppets all the way around.
I am so onto something. I am like, this is it's most of my creative energy is going to this crazy stuff just because it's so satisfying and exhilarating, but it is an enormous amount of work. I'm not complaining at all, but it's not like just kind of, popping your iPhone on and doing a 30-second video and then throw it out there. It's dubbing and writing and shooting and the craftsmanship and getting better at puppetry and editing and syncing it all up. It's so fun. I'm having such a ball. more to come. Much more to come.
Yeah, and, PO says the CFO puppet is
Oh
also
yes,
pretty
the
good.
CFO. I can't see who's on it. So P.O. Morel is playing the CFO, the Chief Fish Officer. The first scene of the epic, which is humbly titled "Journey to the Center of the Single Version of the Truth," the greatest data story ever told. And it opens up with the chief dog officer, the CDO, ready to pitch the value and importance of working with data to his board, which is populated by other animals, the CFO being the fish, the CEO, played by Kate Strachnyi, which is, of course, an elephant, the COO, which is an ostrich, played by my wonderful partner, Marianne, the CMO, who's a mouse, Jill Perez does that voice. And I wonder, it's like, how did nobody ever come up with this construct of having animals be a corporate board with the middle initial being an animal? For me, it was just sort of lying there waiting to be done.
Well, and as Fred says too, your puppets say everything that people are thinking. So it gets an interesting. We can walk into that real quick, then we'll talk about the topic at hand. But I think the puppets do a good job at sort of deconstructing and sort of laying it on a third party to say a lot of stuff that I think everyone's thinking, but you don't want to put your maybe not a name on it. But if it's a puppet saying it, then
if it's a puppet
different.
I did this intercept video thing at Salesforce at a Salesforce conference in New York, and if you take the E off of Salesforce, it spells Sales Fork. So I have a character called Sales Fork that's in my video epic, but I didn't bring anything, and I'm just showing up at Javits Center. And I decided, okay, I've got to do something here. This is just too much of an opportunity. So I found a spoon, actually, and I drew a little face on this spoon. And I went around to the different booths and interviewed anybody who had a swag stuffed animal character. And so I interviewed like an octopus, a mouse. Somebody had a kangaroo that the spoon dipped into her pouch. It got really awkward there for a moment. But personally, I thought it was hilarious. I had a ball. And all these people really brought it, because I just show up and go, hi, let's do this quick interview. I'm just using my phone and this spoon, and just out of the, outrageous. But from a content perspective, I can get to the funny faster through this puppet angle, I've found, than if I'm just doing human to human intercept interview. And you know me, if there's a joke there to be had, I will look for it. And the puppets just take it all into, as you say, just a whole different universe. And you can't be too serious. You can't be serious at all.
Which is fun, because this is like a really serious business, though. And they say this was sort of a lowercase s. But the data world is, and you've been in this space for ages. I think sometimes it takes itself a bit too seriously.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh
yeah, lots of money on the line. Like
yeah, lots of money on the line. But I would say, the value question, which we're going to dive into, that's still a giant question mark in my opinion. That's a giant question mark with a capital Q. And spend shit tons of money on the stuff. And at the end of the day, like, what are we getting out of it? So let's dive into that now. Let's dive into the topic at hand. Explaining value to the business.
Explaining value. In quotes, capital B. Yes. I start with this observation that I've articulated before around why is the data department it seems to be the only department that has all of these kind of existential pondering, philosophical wanderings around value and what is it and how do we. You don't find that in the marketing department. You don't find that in operations. You don't find that in, if you look at an enterprise, typical enterprise, which we all deal with all the time, that's most of our audience, the other departments in that enterprise aren't sitting around wondering how to explain value to the business. And I think that element, we've got to look at that very seriously and go, just, get the work done. And I think there's an impatience on the side of the rest of the enterprise leaders of like, okay, here comes the data person again, just kind of being really philosophical and like, well, you can't really explain it, but you've got to explain. Meanwhile, sales is up there going, we hit our number or we didn't hit our number. Right? Ops is going, we made the quota, we fulfilled our operational requirements or we didn't. The product got shipped or it didn't get shipped. I mean, even marketing, which tends to have a little bit of, you know, there's that famous phrase, I know I waste half my ad budget. I just don't know which half.
Yep.
William Wrigley said, right? Classic. But even they seem to have a lot more confidence about the ongoing foundational value they bring to an organization. Maybe a certain campaign doesn't work or not, but marketing is core to any kind of brand building. And so I just wonder if we, and then we talk to ourselves about it, right? So what is value? How do we articulate it? I just feel like we got to break out of that somehow and get to, data ranting 3.0 or whatever stage we're going to get to, where we go, look, this is how it works. This is why it's good. This is why you got to do more of it.
Yeah.
Well,
go on,
ahead, Joe. I was going to say, I think where you see the value is when other parts of the org ask for data and say, hey, we don't have clear analytics on our marketing campaigns. Can you help us with that? And frankly, there was an article that came out over the weekend that maybe we'll get to, talking about the kind of modern data stack craze and saying maybe it's time to move on from that terminology, because we don't really care about the technology that much. What we care about is what we can do with it.
Well, let me share something with you too. But since we're on the topic of marketing, I just want to. There was this article that came out in October, in the Wall Street Journal.
Of
all places, but it talks about the divide between.
Source, yes.
Yeah, it's a new publication.
No puppets.
So no puppets. But the interesting thing is, so there's this article that I always reference. The divide between chief marketing officers and CEOs is growing. Research finds. So basically, the nutshell is CEOs say they understand what CMOs do. CMOs disagree. So the interesting stat was, where was this? Okay, 9 out of 10 CEOs say that the role of marketing plays is clearly defined at their companies, according to the McKinsey survey, so it must be true. But only 22% of marketing chiefs say their jobs are well defined and understood by other C-suite executives, down from 31% in 2019. So if marketing, which has been around for quite a while, you mentioned William Wrigley. I mean, I think that quote was from the 1920s.
Yeah.
So. That was a while ago, right? It was 100 years
definitely.
ago. The data is a bit newer. And so I guess my whole point is, if marketing is still this misunderstood by executives, it just sort of makes sense that something newer like data would be arguably more misunderstood. So
you hit on something, Matt, that I think is the core to a lot of it, is when you start to see people other departments wanting your work. And a unique aspect of being in the data department, I use that term as kind of a generic term, where data and analytics come from, rather than sort of splitting a lot of organizational hairs. It provides this horizontal value across every other part of the company. I don't know another part of the company that could provide value to literally every other part of the organization, or at least have the opportunity to. And so getting that word out, which is a big thing I preach all the time in terms of data management, data value storytelling, if you will, is so critical for these data leaders to beef up on those soft skills, on that ability to communicate how they are and why it's so important to adhere to a data standard, or, stop beating up the data stewards, or searching before creating, or just holistically investing in the kind of capabilities that we need to get data and analytics to bring more value to an organization. We just keep struggling with that stuff. And so getting that really clear, crisp story and narrative out, which is some version of, it makes everything else better.
Well, the problem is
the right way.
I think business leaders across most verticals will recognize that they use data, right? So any transaction that happens on a website, that gets recorded in a data system. I think the story we're not telling is what you can do beyond that, beyond the basic accounting, beyond the basic inventory tracking. And the other problem we have is that we're in an industry, this data industry is very subject to hype cycles. Data science,
really?
Data stack, now AI. And that leads us to spend a lot of time navel gazing just like kind of we're looking at our own reflection, if you will, rather than actually going and trying to help other parts of the business. Like, oh, we're going to deploy Snowflake now. Well, that's great. Snowflake's a great technology, but what are we going to do with it? Like, how are you going to help the inventory part of the company, or how are you going to help marketing do their job a bit better and communicate what they're doing to the CEO? Say, how are you going to do that with Snowflake?
Oh, by the way, can I just make one correction here real quick? It was John Wanamaker actually who said that half my advertising spend is wasted.
Hi, Jacob. Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Jacob. I'll be talking to him later. I'm on his show, the Ninja Cat show.
Nice.
You got to check out. I'm going to do a plug for him. If you've not listened to Big Data Day, so I'm out there supporting all the rest of us like hyper creative folks in the data space. You got to check it out from Ninja Cat. He wrote basically a Hamilton-like opera. It's just audio only with songs about dealing with data at an organization, and it's hilarious. That's how we met. I saw that and I sent him my puppets. He's like, "Oh, you're cool too," and so we're doing an interview later. But check him out for sure. Big Data Day.
Joe, did you see Ninja Cat at a club in Berlin or something? I mean, that's a fantastic name. I love it.
Is it
Ninja Cat?
Didn't you DJ for Ninja Cat?
Ninja Cat? No, it sounds like another club in Berlin. Anyway, that's an interesting one. I mean, actually, there's some interesting comments here real quick. Let me just get to these. John Cook, what's up, dude? The difference between something like marketing and data is CEO sees marketing being needed just to know how to make it effective. They see data teams as plumbing and not knowing how needed they are. I think this is mostly accurate. I guess I would wonder why you would have a data team if you don't know how they're needed in the first place. To me, that just seems like a wild misspend up front. But I do see this in the real world. Marketing is one of the things where if you look at, so what's interesting is if you look at the tenures of chief marketing officers and chief data officers, chief marketing officers are only slightly more tenured in their positions than chief data officers. I believe the tenure is about 18 to 2 years for CDO and about 2.5 years for CMO. I can look up the right numbers. I think it's roughly around that.
That's kind of the driving force in my puppet epic, because the CDO my CDO realizes that he gets all kinds of data or analysts telling him that the average tenure of a chief dog officer, they get put down in their first 18 months. And so he's trying to not get put down. That's the version. That's the dog version of getting fired. A little gruesome, but you gotta have a little
dark. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I like to go dark. If I can go dark, I'll go dark. It's such a surprise to people. Get a little edge. Darkness helps scare them into it. I'm trying to, drive action here. So.
Yeah, and then what else is this? Jason Taylor, aka LinkedIn user. How much of this is noise where people are whining about how they don't get along with / understand each other?
That's an undercurrent. I think that's that's certainly a motif in almost all of these engagements. We just don't understand each other. We're using the wrong terminology, or I don't understand the technical side. And how much of that is just the nature of humans trying to communicate.
Yeah.
So the flip side of that is the better, buff up your communication skills. How well can you speak to others that you don't know and get them to go, as I'm fond of saying, from I have no idea what you're talking about to how do we live without this? And having a background in sales and marketing, that's what you do for a living. And that's where I came from. I came from door-to-door sales. So if you don't show the value in your first couple of minutes, it's not like a metaphor, getting your foot in the door or getting the door. It actually happens. So, in terms of just kind of the building up that muscle, that communication muscle, I've had a lot of miles in my experience. So that's what I try and share with folks, is just how to get there quickly.
Were you like Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite, where he's going door to door selling Tupperware?
I never been consumer. Okay. Making some sweet moolah with Uncle Rico. I did B2B sales. I sold maps. So that'll kind of date it, because maps, who buys a map? Why would anybody buy a map? But I have paper maps from this company called Thomas Brothers, one of the greatest jobs I ever had, actually, as I look across my career. And would just go door to door to businesses and bring in these maps and, just get yelled at, get kicked out. People would say there's no solicitors. And my snappy answer was always, oh, I thought that meant lawyers. And a side people had all the time. You can tell me when I get too far off topic. We shoot every third salesman, and the second one just left. And that was like a printed sign that you could buy that sign and put it on your door. And so that always kind of weeded out the weak. Anybody who didn't go through us, you just pass these signs and walk right in.
Wow.
And get right to the pitch, get right to it. Oh, you're this kind of company. Everybody needs to know these. There's all these. Oh, I have one already. No, there's however many thousands of changes a year, blah, 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 blah. But just the idea of being able to meet somebody you don't even know, somehow connect with them really quickly, get into some kind of, again, value-based discussion, and in this case, have them give you money without threatening them. Obviously, it's a sales process. That's incredible training.
Yeah. As Fred says, coffee is for closers.
Coffee's for closers. Yes, another great movie.
It's a great movie. Glenn Ross for people who are.
Glenn Ross. I saw that on Broadway.
Was it Broadway?
Certain lines
Interesting.
that only you could hear. Well, when it first came out, it was a play, David Mamet play.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And the movie's better because it has the Alec Baldwin character that really brings a different edge.
Yeah.
To it. So that character, I don't think is in the play. And there were certain lines where there were like 12 of us in this sold out Broadway audience were laughing at. It was like, oh yeah, because it was like a real like salesperson. You really got that. So it's.
But I think you're onto something though with door-to-door sales. I mean, and that sign that we shoot the every third salesman, and the second one just left. What have you just said? That's fascinating because I think that there's a lot of parallels to this, and maybe how we might want to communicate, with quote the business and explaining value to the business. Because what I notice is a lot of these discussions are very hand wavy, right? And basically kind of full of crap. I mean, I have a pretty high BS meter, and I've been told I have a very low tolerance for idiots. So, except when I am one. But
probably by other idiots.
Probably by other idiots. Yeah. So I mean, they're all dumb.
I think you have wonderful tolerance. I think you have plenty of tolerance for me. So I've never.
Yeah, who would be that person?
Yeah.
No, but I think there's some parallels. I mean, in a lot of ways, it seems like we overcomplicate a lot of ways that we communicate with the business. It's as one of my old bosses told me. If I ask for the time, don't tell me how to make a watch. Just tell me the time, right? And the other thing is, he said, when you've closed a sale, shut up and take the order. Don't keep talking.
That's my father's advice too.
Yeah.
My dad, I have that in my book. My dad told me that, and I have a whole mini chapter about learning that from my father, who was one of the greatest salespeople. He could sell water to fish. I mean, he could convince anybody of anything, and that was kind of our family superpowers that we were really convincing. Wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you two agree that we're really yes? And playing Monopoly with him was an education, just negotiating, just really strict. But I come back from this call and I blew a sale. And the short version of the story is I was talking to this person. They said yes. And I said, great, it's going to be like last year. And she said, well, I didn't really like last year. And the thing unraveled in front of me. And I come back practically in tears. And my dad's like, when you get the yes, shut up. Shut up. Move to the next thing. Doesn't mean you don't say anything, but you're no longer selling. So that ability to communicate the value of what you have, the benefits of what you have to offer, match what your capabilities are to the needs of your audience. These are all different versions of selling. And as data professionals, we have to be able to sell in the concept of how we can bring value to the business. And the only way you can do that is to hear about what the problems are. And
but Scott, I have this new, database. It can handle petabytes of data, per minute. It's awesome. The throughput is, at least, 50 million records per second. Is that not valuable to you?
if I'm an IT guy, I'm like, wow, that's fantastic. If I'm a business person, it's like, who let you know? The only question I have is, who let you in my office? Why
But
do I
it
care
does
about
50
that?
million events per second,
I
Scott.
could
Like,
care about. I could care less about that. Why don't I? Why do I care about in sales too? And that sounds like we're going to sort of land on that because selling is a way to communicate the value. There's features and there's benefits. So 50 billion petabytes or whatever, how many event records you could. That's a feature.
And
What's
it's a
the
technical
benefit of
feature.
that?
It's a
And it's a
technical
technical
feature.
feature of
It's not a
that, which
user
is
facing product feature. And I think that's the important thing, too. So let's rewind like 20 years. Let me ask both of you, what was your first experience with Google? Like, when did you first encounter Google search? Probably in the early 2000s or something.
my classmate slash girl I was dating at the time showed me Google. We were,
What was your experience? Like,
I
what
think it
did
was
you?
cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get to this. So I was using, I think Yahoo at the time or whatever for searches, and it was, I think it's during one of our engineering or math classes, and she shows me Google, and I'm like, that's pretty dope. Answers are good, super simple. It seems too
Fast.
simple, and it's
Yeah.
fast, right? Yeah. So I was like, I then instantly converted, used it ever since. There's no looking back. What about you, Scott?
Me, I remember sort of a seminal moment, not necessarily Google, but just sort of realizing the internet world out there and just what a mind blowing experience that was. Was my son was taking a year in Australia and he was done and he was trying to ship things back and he was trying to figure out how to ship it back. And I was able to kind of look up shipping locations in Brisbane and I'm in Connecticut, and I was just marveling as it was happening of the kind of work that used to take, if it was even possible, not that long before that. I mean, I you know, grew up in the '70s and started working in the '80s, so no computers onto
Lots of
like sort of
puppets.
small computers, and puppets I've been doing forever. Um, and so that was kind of like my mind-blowing experience of like, wow, you could get to all of this. I'm sure I was using Google too, so it wasn't differentiating necessarily on the search engine, but like, wow. And then that became really, quaint anecdote not very quickly after that. And then there was a period of years where people would say, well, where'd you get that? On the internet. I found it on the internet. It's like, then it became, that's where you go first. And my Amazon experience was I had to like replace my oil filter with my car, and I called up the service folks, and I could get in about 3 days later, and it was going to cost $100. And then I look up on Amazon, I could buy these parts for 18, and I can get them the next day. I can fix it before I even had my car appointment.
Yep.
Go to, and it was a lot less. It's like, all right, this is a new world here. I love this, but I jumped right into it. So it was, for me,
Yeah.
it was.
Matt, what are you driving at with that question?
Well, I think going back to what you were saying about the 50 million events per second, like no one in your business, no one in marketing cares if you could do 50 million events per second. Just like no one back in the early 2000s cared that Google was scanning petabytes of data to deliver their search results. What they care about is what you can do with this thing, right? So if you show marketing, hey, I can give you more customer insights, we can find the customers that we're actually looking for with your ads, they're going to care about that. They don't care about 50 million events per second unless it somehow affects the customer experience or the internal experience, and it's a better experience and it's better for the business.
Yep.
And those are benefits. Again, those are benefits.
Yeah.
Versus features. And understanding that, like to your core, would help. It's how it gets done versus why it's important.
Yes.
These really basic things, and using clear language that your audience will understand, which means you got to do different kind of language, different kind of approach, depending on who you're talking to. But telling that same message and just getting really good at it.
Yeah.
Is just I think that really important for folks who want to be successful and be leaders in the data space.
But let's say, for argument's sake, hypothetically, that I'm a total nerd who can't talk to the business, that I can't communicate to save my life, that I'm kind of a blithering idiot when I talk to people. I'm not talking about myself, by the way. Not projecting at all.
Asking for a friend.
Yeah, asking for a friend here. How do you suggest that I learn these techniques of listening and persuasion and selling?
find, Google's the top books that help you do that, or, YouTube videos or whatever it is, just like the basic understanding. You can buy my book, but it's probably too advanced for somebody who was, at that point too specific. But you have two choices, I think there. Either you are this if that same character is also incredibly brilliant and is the one you can give the hardest problems to and they solve them, then they need a really good leader who understands that talent and can guard it and nurture it and point it in the right direction. It's like, don't put this person in front of the board, but these, assassin type exercises we need, that's the person to give it to. And there's room for all of those kinds of people. But in general, most people aren't that, right? They're somewhere in that big middle. I live in that too, where they have to just learn how to communicate. They have to listen. Try listening. Just try listening. Try shutting up. Try saying hello. I learned in sales really early. There's different kinds of questioning, right? There's what they call closed probes. Hi, do you need this for XYZ? Blah, 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 very specific. And then there's open probes, which get people to talk more.
Yep.
And those are things like, that's a really effective way to get somebody to talk more. Tell me more about that.
Yep.
Oh, really? Gee. And, nature pours a vacuum, and so does a conversation between people, and they will talk. And when I had a sales team that I was training, and I didn't create these techniques, but learned them over years, it's like, if you let the right person talk, they will tell you every freaking problem they've got. They will lay it out there. And if you're a sympathetic ear, they will tell you the horror stories. And when I was at Nielsen, when I led a sales team at Nielsen, it was finding those folks who were, in our case, in pain and getting them to just explain their day-to-day nightmare existence they were having with data, even if you could predict it. And that's also the challenge. Like, I think some data folks know the answer. So they're going like, this is your problem. This is what you got. Go through the exercise and let somebody tell you their problem. They're going to give you some nuances of terminology, a different twist of phrase they might use. And the better you are at listening, the better you are at realizing, okay, that's a great golden nugget. Let me follow up on that one. But just let them talk.
Yeah. I've always found that as I cut you off. So,
but wait a minute, I have another thing.
Self-awareness is key. So it's interesting too. One of the things I've learned over the years is if you ask open-ended questions, this also like the open probe questions. This also lets the person who you're talking to own the answer to what they're saying. So a good question to ask is, okay, so how do you think that would work? That forces them to come up with the answer, and at the same time, they own that answer. They own that outcome now of that answer. And I found this highly effective to getting people on board in a way that it's almost a Jedi mind trick. I learned this actually from Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. If you talk about books and resources, I feel this is one of the best books on not just negotiation. It's a book about hostage negotiation, actually. But it's I think one of the most effective books for just communicating. Because if you think about a hostage situation, it's kind of a high risk negotiation. And it says win-win is also for losers in this case. Like there's no such thing as a win-win situation in a hostage negotiation. It's not like you can like negotiate. Oh, if you take like half their limbs, we'll call it square. Yeah. Okay, bring half their body back.
You don't want to split that difference physically.
No, it doesn't work that way. It's like you want the hostage alive, and and then an outcome for everybody, right? So that's what it's about. Yeah, but I felt like that was a really good kind of Jedi mind trick. If you just say, well, Scott, I mean, that's interesting. How would you envision this works, right? And and it just pause. And this is in like there's periods of quiet too. That's the other thing that works really well. It's just being quiet, letting the person fill in the blanks.
Oh yeah, it's just it takes a lot of skill and training to shut the hell up, because people want to, they're thinking about the next thing they want to say.
Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be a very boring podcast after everyone's going to shut up and like just let each other talk.
We're all going to take a moment of silence and let the listeners tell us what they want to hear. But just that questioning, answering, that kind of process, that it's just these are out. These come a lot from sales and marketing. They're applicable to data, but they're not they're universal, I think, in terms of communicating with people.
Yeah.
Right? Your own partner. You don't go to your partner and say, I know what your problem is. You hear her out. You hear them out. Okay, let's
Speak
get
for
to that
yourself, Scott.
solution. Yeah, well, at least I try. Hopefully she's listening. You hear how I'm trying?
Yeah.
And
I know what your problem is.
yeah.
It's me. Just kidding.
I know what your problem. You don't know what your problem is. That's your problem. That's one of my favorite lines. But just getting better at that. What's the fewest number of words you can use when you're writing something, when you're talking about something? I go through that exercise a lot. Like, how do I cut down these? I have an explanation, but it's too verbose. How do I make it more economical? Headline writing is, those kinds of things. I had a little bit of journalism training in college and, editor of my school newspaper, but still it's those disciplines are incredibly valuable. And I don't think they change, right? If you read a good news story, it starts with the lead, answers the questions, and they talk about this pyramid where most important stuff on the inverted pyramid, the most important stuff on the top, and then you get more and more sort of granular or back up the story more and more, so you can cut from the bottom, from the top, but cut from the bottom in terms of word count and space and all those other kind of physical constrictions. But thinking about that, I talk to people all the time. I talk to leaders of businesses all the time, especially on the brand, and I have a series of questions like, so what do you guys do? And I don't get their brand story, I get their freaking life story. Well, I used to work for this company and then I left there and then that didn't work out. And then I'm like, are we even close to this part of your career yet? It's, and there's no stakes with me. I'm just hearing them out to hear their style, to hear how they convey their messaging. But even at the, at the conference level, at the, convention level, at the cocktail party level, you still got to have your story tight and straight. Because these are, I think, the context is a business context. Even if you're really friendly with folks, it's still a business context. You're trying to talk to somebody to somehow bring value to their life.
Or subtract it, depending on what you want to do.
I get subtract it.
I just want to anger as many people as possible.
That's a good way to get kicked out.
It might happen. Let me go through some of the comments here real quick. Fred has a really good... nobody wants to know the trouble I've seen. There's actually a lot of deep thoughts in that one.
That's Fred. Fred's very deep.
Fred is. Yes. Also has another question for you. Will you be writing another book?
No, not directly. So I may have a novelization of the Journey to the Center, the single version of the truth. But right now, my creative energy is really focused on producing this epic multi-part series with these puppet characters, and it's probably about 10 episodes. I've got 5 of them in some form of production that are written and recorded. I've got to do like the rough editing, but I've already got the guest voices recorded. I've got the puppetry done. I've got it synced up. I've got to do some editing where I find like that's really where the story starts to take off in the editing process. So this whole thing creatively over the last year doing all this stuff is just, for me, again, just incredibly satisfying and mind-blowing in terms of just doing this kind of work. I'm just having a ball with it.
You're having fun with it. I remember getting a preview of your video at Big Data London. You were actually the speaker before me, and I was in the back actually watching the your presentation on the monitors for the stage crew, and it was hilarious. They're all cracking up at your puppet show. It was really cool. I hadn't seen it before, and then I get on and totally kill the audience. But it was fun.
That's kind of a in my head objective when I do public speaking too. It's like if I can make the crew laugh, because they see everything, right? It's not like
the
guys running AV at this conference aren't like data AV guys. They automotive folks are coming in next, and doctors are next week. So it's like if you can do something to make those guys laugh, and
well, they're having a hoot. Plus, they're British. They have a different sense of humor. It's just you have to be a bit sharper over there, and so I feel like it was a good compliment to your show. That you know
Appreciate that. It's fun.
the stage guys were cracking
Yeah,
up
well,
with.
it's outrageous too. I just again the context the that it's in is people aren't expecting it at all, and then you just burst out with all this stuff that's basically animation almost. It just changes the whole dynamic, the whole energy
Yeah,
in the room, and it's like this is a secret weapon I have. Not that secret, but like this is a something in my kit bag that I got to use more and more of, which I am. So incorporating videos when I do my presentations at these conferences is
hmm
really fun too.
that's
Just kind of
cool.
mix it up. Yeah.
And then Fred has a question here. What conferences would you like to keynote?
What I like to get, I always wanted to do a Gartner conference, but they finally just told me we don't have external. The wording was, we don't use external on topic speakers.
They want
Because my
internal
pitch
off-topic
was,
speakers.
yeah, so they'll bring somebody who like is just about creativity in general, or how to get your life together, or
God, we got to get on that
like
circuit,
Big
Matt.
Data London, right? We saw that the guy was an astronaut, right? Tim Peake, great. He was an astronaut. He put a couple words about data in the beginning, but it's this big inspirational kind of speaker. So that was at least their
Motivational.
excuse.
Okay.
But I don't know. I've been doing great. Anywhere they'll have me almost. So I'm going
Hmm.
to whether it's a keynote or a main stage thing or whatever. I tell people in my usual humble fashion, the bigger the audience, the better I am.
I feel
Which
the same
means
way.
which means on one-on-ones, I'm not that good. I can just die with like 3 people in the room, not because it's not a big audience, but if my stuff doesn't hit the right topic area, I'm like not the person they want to hear. And that's happened before. Happened at D&B. It was really sort of, it was a seminal moment there for me because it made me really realize like where my spot was. And that's another thing that's important, at least in the work I do, like know your niche, know your area, try and stick with it, be as good in that as possible. But the generalist view doesn't work. And when people want to understand really technical, how to get it done stuff, I am not the person to talk to. And so thrust sometimes in those conversations, people are just like, we don't need to hear this cute, pithy, wacky stuff. Is just not what we're looking for.
Huh.
So
That's interesting. Yeah,
know your spot, play your position really
play your
well,
position.
but stick to
Yeah,
your position. Yeah, that's my feeling.
that's good. Yeah, conferences are an interesting thing. I feel like I do better in big audiences than small ones. Because there's a certain, I think, a threshold of attendees in the conference where at a talk where it's actually easier to give a talk. I think it's easier to give a talk in front of 1,000 or more people versus a room of like 20. Because then you're just talking to a sea of faces, right? And I think it's almost easier in that way because you feel like you kind of put the blinders on. It's a lot easier. As if it's smaller audience, it's actually harder from what I've experienced. And so the more the merrier.
Yeah,
Sure.
especially if you feed off of it. I know you've got laugh lines and you're looking for interaction and you're looking for reaction. I had a real eye-opening experience last year. I at least record audio and if possible video of everything I do because that's the best teacher out there and people should do that. So any of you out there who are going to present to your bosses or whatever, just open up your little voice recorder app on your phone and hit record and listen to yourself, and it'll be an education that you couldn't even pay for. It's that valuable. It's it's hard to get that, and so it's always been a training tool for me. So last year I had a conference and I was taping me, but I had another camera and I pointed it at the audience and I watched that, and that was like, wow. Because you think, and I hear me in the background thinking I'm like droning on, doing this, I'm doing it, and people are just, on their phone, or they're sort of looking, or they're kind of looking up. But even the people who are paying attention, it's like I'm watching their physicality. It was this big ballroom, and I could kind of zoom in on my iPad, kind of like see this little group over here, seemed active, and it was really, really, it was incredibly valuable, and also like real training to see what really works. You feel like stuff works, especially if you're not distracted by watching yourself. You're just hearing yourself and watching these reactions. And one thing I picked up on that was as soon as I put on a video, and I had 3 videos in this, or 2 videos in this session, the whole nature of the room changed. I mean, it was just like unbelievably powerful, which I knew was there anyway. But after that, I thought, okay, I'm always fitting video in here because it just changes the energy a little bit. It gets people who weren't paying as much attention to pay more attention. It's got to, and again, it's this multimedia thing, even though the videos are of me in the one case, me and my grandson, if you know that video. It was just, it was incredibly valuable to just see people's reaction.
Interesting. It's like when they play. It's like when they play films in classes, like my kids' classes. The kids just like automatically shut up and watch the show.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we're having a film today. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of hilarious because when Joe and I were growing up a long time ago, it was much more novel, right? We didn't have iPads everywhere. There were TVs around the house and such, but it was a big deal to watch a movie back then because you weren't doing it all day long. It's kind of funny to me that it still works even now when kids have phones and iPads.
Well, especially back in the 80s, Matt, with because they're showing some pretty lame stuff. Like, remember Dare videos? Like, don't buy drugs from people like this. But buy them from people that look like that. I'm just kidding. Oh man. Switching gears real quick. Jeremy has a question here. Hey guys, big fan of Scott's work. Can AI finally force master data management?
I hope so. It certainly can help, right? How can it not help? How can it not help, clean up your stuff? Training it with the right thing. We don't have to go through that again, but obviously as long as it's trained on the right stuff, I don't see how it can't help. Certainly with basic stewardship, at least with basic stewardship stuff. I mean, people still, reformatting phone numbers and whatever kind of crap that they have to go through. But it should absolutely, as long as it's, as long as you're starting with good data to start that cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I don't know whether it's finally, but
I think it can't help though. And I actually wrote an article about this back in November about how I feel like machine learning and AI, especially generative AI, might be what it takes to push data management into something that's, I think, finally scaled, right? Because it's not like data is going to continue shrinking or stop growing. Especially with generative AI, it's going to keep growing a ton because most of it's going to be synthetic data, AI produced data. So I feel like with generative AI is probably one of the only things that actually could help data management scale to the point where we hate to say it, but stop complaining about it because it feels like again.
Stop complaining about.
Oh, true, yeah.
But it's given up on it being solved.
I know it's
just, commentary on the side because
because it feels like again I hop into my LinkedIn data bubble. It seems like it's one of the areas where I always notice that there's a post on data governance and data management, and we really need to make it work this year. It's kind of like like somebody has weight loss problems or bad they didn't pay attention to DARE, that drug problem. It's like, this is my year. I'm really going to get it together this year. This is what data management feels to me right now.
It's
like the old school reason.
It's a good example because it's the same. I mean, in a way, it's the same discipline, right? You got to eat right. You got to exercise. There's no shortcuts. There's no, I bought a Peloton and now I can hang, I bought the bigger one so I can hang more clothes on it when I come on. I just, if you don't use that stuff. Oh, we got a new fancy tool or this new shake mix. Does it ever work? Is there an Ozempic for data now that people could use? I don't know.
That's such a good question.
It's just, it's hard work. You just got to do it. I mean, there's no shortcuts here, really.
I feel like this the pure data scaling problem, though, right? Because it's now data is going to be produced in so many different forms that it feels like even with MDM, there might be, I guess, permutations of data that MDM, because it's generated by a machine, may not catch. I was writing about this morning, actually, for my book. It was Humans and Machines, and it was titling Data Modeling 2.0, sort of like what Andre Karpathy talked about with Software 2.0, right? Where machines would be generating code for software and ultimately writing software on its own. I feel like data and data modeling is approaching this inflection point as well. You're already seeing it with generative AI and the ability to generate code. And I think this is the future where you would have agents largely autonomous, or people just doing all this stuff on its own. But then it sort of requires maybe a rethink of how we're thinking about data management, while also, I think, staying true to the core principles. But cat's out of the bag at this point, and we're not going back. So I think, it requires a bit of a rethink of sort of the world we're in right now, because it's going to be a world increasingly run by machines, not humans. So
truth before meaning. That's all I keep going back to.
Yep.
Get the truth in your data before you derive meaning. That's not changing. Will AI fix, what's the latest thing that's going to finally push data management? Right before that, it was the mesh fabric debate. Before that, it was big data. Before that, it was, whatever, data warehousing. Before that, it was chart of account. We go through, it's hard not to be cynical in this space where these cycles of, 2 years ago, it was the mesh fabric debate. That's just been, right. It got knocked off the front page.
Got knocked off the front page. Yep.
And
that was the big topic, though. That was all anyone was talking about
for a long time. Yeah. And I was really interested in just the dynamics of the debate, not so much the features and, frankly, even benefits of one approach or another. I was just having a ball watching this debate go back and forth between the Fabriconians and the Meshies. And Gartner reared its head in there, and obviously Zamak is this high priestess, kind of reluctantly leading the charge, and just the devotees and the passion and the intensity. And I'm just watching this, going, this is part of this is really hilarious.
Oh, it is. Zamak's a really good friend of mine too, and I joke with her that generative AI is probably the best thing that happened to her, in the sense where it did take the pressure off of what she's working on. Because I still think there's a lot of utility to what data mesh can provide, but there was just so much hype and so much BS happening in the industry right now. And I feel like, as I told her, this is your time to just focus on building, and you don't have to keep responding to a million, stupid requests about, some subtle nitpicking
for a year and a half.
Oh, she was, yeah. I think she'll be back. Yeah. But every rock star gets a moment to take a break. So
right. I don't think she's going to be a one-hit wonder. I think there will be a lot of conversation around this in the future. And the one thing I'll say, I admired her for her data storytelling techniques, for her storytelling, how she crafted that narrative, how it broke through, and again, really seriously, how the Gartner folks were trying to co-opt it and crush it at the same time, which was just a shark jumping moment for that group.
That was funny.
We came up with this already, but no, it's not the right thing. But we did come up with it. But if you look in this document, buried in here behind this paywall, this was really our idea. And it's like, you guys are just protesting way too much here. Yeah. Okay. And isn't mesh just a sexy fabric anyway? So.
The one thing I'll say, the thing I really liked about the data mesh hype cycle is that it was finally a data hype cycle that wasn't as much about technology. Big data, all about Hadoop, modern data stacks, Snowflake, BigQuery, whatnot. Whereas this was more about team organization. And I think we need more of those hype cycles to say, you know what, we need to think about how we're organizing our teams and how we're leading to solve some of these problems. The new shiny thing from Oracle or Microsoft or Google is not going to solve your problems unless you get the team structure right.
Yeah.
She had me at socio-technical. That was it. Yeah, right in there, like first paragraph. Like, all right, this is going to be fun.
It is. And Matt and I experiment. We actually have a real world use case for this right now, where we have a client that's decentralized, and so how do you apply these sort of topologies of architecture to really work with that, right? And so it's something I think all too often we beat over the head of organizations that, well, there's one size fits all, and I think that there's what Shamak helped popularize too is just the fact that if you're trying to go decentralized, especially, then you have to sort of rethink how you're architecting these systems, right? And so I think that was a
But when the business said, so how are we getting value from data? And the answer was, well, we're going to do a data mesh. That's the wrong answer.
Yeah, it's the wrong answer. Yep.
But that became an answer for a lot of people. I watched people go, oh, that's what we're doing now, is we're doing a data mesh. Again, it's like, who cares other than you and your team? And it's cool. But again, it's we get back to our topic of the day. There isn't value for the company you work for in just declaiming that that's that's your objective.
For sure. Well, I think the same thing's happening with AI right now. Every company
Yeah.
now has to be an AI company, and it's like, well, how are you gonna add value to the business? Well, AI, right? Now some people in the comments are pointing out, obviously, you have to get the foundation correct, and
That's it. Yeah, I didn't see the comments, but that's totally my new keynote this year. Last year I had data's the new bullshit, so now it's very easy this year. Just do data's the new bullshit Gen AI edition. So it's got like a big stencil. It's like, here you go. Just add Gen AI. Isn't that what we're all doing? Doesn't that make it that much better? Yeah, everybody's an AI company.
Yep. It'll go away at some point. I mean, Tristan Handy from DBT had a really good article yesterday about just becoming sort of the moving on from the modern data stack. Just because I think he feels like the term sort of had its moment in the sun, and now it's time to get back to what its purpose was, which is analytics. And I think the same thing is going to happen with AI, where it's a thing we use to describe what will now just be something that's sort of commonplace, right? Like, again, I always say that we don't marvel at electricity. All of us are using it, or the internet. We just kind of take it for granted, and it does its thing, and we don't really acknowledge its presence anymore because it's fulfilled its meaning and its utility. It does what it does, so you don't have to keep praying at it, right? And I think the same thing with AI. I think over the next few years, we're going to see ourselves just now that I think it's reaching actual utility, it's time to put it in the back burner and just let it do its thing. So. Doesn't mean it's not going to get better, but the hype cycle will move on to something else.
But it also doesn't mean it's the answer to everything.
No, of course not.
And like, that's what we should do. So,
yeah,
because then you're already hearing the reverb of like, well, where's the real value here? And I know everybody wants to do it, but this, and you just see these, when you've been doing this as long as I have, since pre-2K, it's hard not to just recognize the cycles of, here comes another one.
Yep.
Another, one size fits all, quick fix fantasy, a band-aid, easy button solution. It's going to be the magic one for here we go.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a Y2K moment right now with AI in some ways, where it's like, if you don't do this, like bad things will happen.
There's that threat too. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're gonna be competition's gonna outrun you, right? Meanwhile, they're all just using ChatGPT, uploading private data to a public system and all that stuff. It happens every day. So it's an interesting world. Anyway, coming up on time, man, but I want to let you go and enjoy your Cocoa Beach experience
I thought this was the
there.
pre-show. Anyway, when are we going live? Are we going live?
This is Super Bowl pre-show right now.
Yeah, did you watch the Super Bowl last night?
Yes, that was fun. Yeah, not like, I didn't pick too many sides. Obviously, I was rooting for the love story. Who doesn't love a good love story?
Right.
Watching the fun commercials. Yeah, my girlfriend's totally into football, so she knows. She's like, "Did you see that?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't actually." Explain that to me. So she grew up watching football, so she.
Interesting. It was a good game, though. I think, what was it, like? 49 or Chiefs won in like the last 7 seconds of the game, so that's always impressive.
Last play. Yeah.
I always think the suspense because they're playing like crap the first half. I was like, what happened to these guys, the Chiefs? And then they do their thing. So
yeah, Marianne told me, she said, it always starts this way. Don't worry, it's always this way.
They have to warm up.
Falling apart. Like, no, they got to warm up.
Don't give up on love, Scott. Don't give up.
Don't give up on what?
On love. Don't give up on love.
That's our Valentine's Day message here. Is that it? So yes.
Cool. Any events you got coming up?
Yeah, I'm going. So I said I'm going to Gardner. Just going to go bop around there. I'm not speaking there, but I'm at Data Universe. Those of you who are not going in New York,
maybe there
Data
too.
Universe. At the Javits Center from the wonderful folks who also brought you Big Data London. I'm going to be doing the Big Data Toronto event with my partner InfoSeps. So I work with this brand InfoSeps, and I've got a whole year relationship with them, at least, where I do events with them and do content and that sort of thing. Avanta, I'm going to be doing a couple of their CDAO events, which is really fun. Great brand, kind of a sister brand of Gartner, and they have these really sort of exclusive, high-level sessions that they do, and I'm their keynoter for a couple of those. Then Big Data London again, doing some DAMA stuff, DAMA New York, DAMA Day in June. So the calendar's filling up nicely.
Nice.
And yeah, I love it. Like I tell people, I have a fear of not public speaking. So for me, it's wherever I can find those opportunities, I leap at them.
Fear of not public speaking. I know what you mean by that.
Yeah. That's my line, by the way. In case you hear it elsewhere, which I have.
I'll use it, but I'll give you attribution for it. That's funny. It's good talking to you, Matt. Also, we'll be at. Do you have any speaking coming up, Matt?
Just in Switzerland, actually, at the end of the month on March 1st. So that's the main thing at the moment.
Yeah, if you happen to be in Verbier, come say hi. And then I'll be in Verbier then off to Saudi Arabia for Leap and Deep Fest, so giving some talks there. And then back, and I believe there will be a lot more to announce very soon. So yeah, stay tuned.
Super. Tape yourself and listen. Doesn't like,
Oh, they tape it for me, and I just watch it. I'm like, Jesus, what a wreck. This guy sucks. Oh, and Fred asked the most important question of the whole show. How do we keep up with the data puppets?
How do you keep up with the perfect? Google data puppets. And you'll
I'm going to Google that right now, actually.
That's it. Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow me on YouTube. And just keep the more episodes coming probably in, I don't know, a couple months, actually. I've got all this content I'm working through, and I want to sharpen it all up. But I'll send out some clips as they happen. But that's the way to do it.
It's a real thing.
Follow me. Yeah, it's a real thing. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Datapuppets.com. I bought the URL. I haven't used it yet, but that's $12 well invested.
Yeah.
It's coming.
You'll go to a GoDaddy right now, but someday.
We'll see.
Yeah. Seb writes says Verbier DJing and data. Yep, that's likely. So, and skiing and snowboarding, assuming there's still snow up there, which it's great right now, of course.
What fun.
Yes. Awesome, Scott. Well, thanks for being on the show again. We'll have you on next Valentine's Day as well.
All right. I'm sure I'll see you between then and now, but always great to talk.
We'll see each other at a few of these conferences you mentioned. Yep.
Love you guys. Thanks for having me as always.
Thank you. And
thanks to the audience. Great interaction and stuff. Great comments. And we'll see you next week. I think it's just Matt and I next week, actually. So there's that.
Yeah. We'll have to come up with some things to talk about. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Matt and I kind of want to do more regular shows too, at least once a month, just us. That's sort of how the show started. So we're getting back to our roots. So anyway, talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.